Hello and welcome to the live streaming premiere of No Way to Die, the Murder of Claudia Lucero. I'm Fox 10 investigator Justin Lum, and I'm joined by my team here, Special Projects executive producer George Obie and photojournalist Corey Goodwin. First time we've had Corey here, but I can tell you that we have been all over this story, our hands on this documentary for several months, stemming back to January 2025 when Alex Madrid was sentenced to death for the murder of Claudia Lucero. George, I'll just start with you for a little bit of the backstory. 2013, you were both here. I mean, this was a very bizarre and horrific case coming out of Mesa. 14-year-old Claudia Lucero found in a dumpster.
Yeah, and the time frame, which we'll get into in the documentary, of when she disappeared, when she was found, and when the announcement was made of an arrest, was over the course of a weekend. So there really wasn't a lot of time between learning of this horrendous act and then, of course, an arrest being made, which I think by and large is rather unusual. Right. I mean, there are times when the victim knows the suspect in many cases, but in this case, when you had something as horrific as this, I don't even think that the public had a chance to really digest what had happened because an arrest was announced. Well, we know it was made fairly quickly, but it was announced just a few days later. And so I think, you know, in looking back on cases like this that we cover previously, there are often times where you're waiting a week or two before you hear potentially of an arrest or a suspect. And in some cases, most recently, we're still waiting on suspects.
They had a person of interest right away, and you guys will all see that story. But for me, it was the images, seeing, you know, old stories from 2013, reporters covering this case. You guys know some of these reporters, but Corey, as we went through the footage, looked back and reflected, and then gathered these interviews, interested the perspective of photojournalists, just the tone and editing this, and just what you took away from all of it.
Well, it's just a interesting case to look at, and locations, and I think I've been to that apartment complex for other homicides in the past, actually, ironically. And it was just interesting to hear Steve Kraft's voice, or Jessica, I can't think of her last name. Flores.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, multiple reporters covering not just the scene of the crime, but then the vigil. Mm-hmm. And I remember you telling me so vividly about this little girl who you guys will hear from, who's just saying it's heartbreaking to know that Claudia was just discarded like trash. So as anyone who has followed this case, and maybe we have some family and friends that are watching right now, but obviously Alex Madrid was put on death row for the murder of Claudia Lucero. He also raped this girl, strangled her, and then she went missing. Her mother thought that, you know, she'd gone to school, went to a friend's house, never came home. The next day, she was found in the dumpster. And this title just came to me. It was fairly, it just made sense. It's No Way to Die. I mean, obviously no one wants to die. We all have our time at some point, whether young or old. But I mean, to think of this little girl who was just living her life, a freshman at Westwood High School, was so loved, and we'll hear from her best friend too in this documentary, to be treated like that and be found like that. I think that sticks with so many in the community to this day. And
again, we're going to learn a lot about this case. A retired detective is going to join us later to give us kind of insight of how they kind of process a scene like this. And I'm sure, you know, look, he's got stories and has covered multiple cases like this. It'll be interesting to hear from someone who has experience in this. How much of an impact did this have on him? Again, this is a person who is responsible for investigating heinous cases like this. And when you come across a case that impacts you in the way that we'll hear from him and how it impacted him, I think that'll hold a lot of weight because, again, these are crimes that for most people would shock them. But when you have somebody in the business who does this on a daily basis and it shocks them, I think and you're going to hear that in this documentary, and then we'll hear from him after.
Yeah, Farrell Swope is his name, retired death investigator for the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office, and me and Corey, we went with him to that spot where the dumpster is still there in this apartment complex. But we also, I think it was big for us to hear from Claudia's mother, Joanne Lucero. She didn't want to go on camera, but we talked to her, using her voice, and she shared her whole album of photos. And just want to ask, what is that like when you're putting together a piece and you can see her face, you know what she looks like, but you're working to the sound of her voice, and I don't know, it was different, but I think it was special and unique that we still, made sure that her voice is heard.
I always appreciate people willing to come forward and talk, about such a difficult thing, especially as her mother. Mm-hmm. Her friend was also a similar situation, and just looking at those pictures, you see that this is a person who had this whole life and people that loved her, and when that gets taken away, it just leaves a big void, and you could hear it in the mother's voice. She probably thinks about her every day. Mm-hmm. And so, especially during editing, you try to treat those people with respect and tell their story as best you can, and appreciate them sharing photos and being willing to talk.
And as a drone pilot, you're not just capturing video on the ground, but this was important that we captured the essence of that spot from the air. You can talk about that. And there's other locations that we made sure there were landmarks we wanted to get.
Drones are very good for setting the scene, setting like an atmospheric tone to a story. And the day that we droned, that location was very cloudy and overcast, which actually worked very well for us. Just interesting to see that in the file video there was children playing all over that dumpster, and the day we flew it 10 years later, there was kids playing all over the place. So I just thought it was interesting.
And they may or may not have any idea that happened. Stories that are passed down. I know some people commenting on social media when we dropped the promo for this said, I remember I drive by that apartment complex. I remember her. I went to school with her, and it's good. I know we have some people in the chat that miss Claudia and are here to watch this. But just at the time, it was, you talked about it being such a big deal. But then over the course of years, as we know in this business, the news cycle moves fast. We're waiting on trial. This took 11 years to get to trial, and you slowly don't hear her name as much. You hear the name of the now convicted killer,
right?
Because it's his trial, but she's not there. And I thought that stood out to me. Is like, do people even know her name anymore?
Well, yeah. I mean, and we touch on that in this documentary of why it took so long, and that may be part of Claudia's mom. I think willing to speak to us is to. Maybe turn the table and say, look, then now the focus needs to be on the memory of her daughter. We are still fresh in, we're less than a year removed from him being convicted and then, of course, ultimately sentenced to death. And so they've had to relive this within the past year. I mean, we're 12 years on from this case, and, having to wait for as long as they did for justice, and then to have to relive it in court. And you're going to hear that as well. You're going to hear exactly what family members said to Alex during sentencing. And I mean, look, we can talk to them all we want, but being in court and facing the killer of your daughter, I mean, that's hard. It's one thing to talk to a camera and to relive moments like this, but to have to face the person who took your daughter's life, I mean, that's not easy for anybody to do. And I think you're gonna hear that. It's gonna resonate, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I will say we had no reason or intention to reach out to the Department of Corrections and ask for an interview with Alex. Just in my opinion and my instinct in doing this, I just felt it wasn't needed. He had said his piece during sentencing. It was about time to talk about Claudia, and we were able to go to Mesa PD, and I thought that was an interesting experience where me and Corey went to the department and talked to their PIOs and looked through the case report and some of the pictures, and then read through text messages that were sent and collected as evidence, Facebook messages. And you really see that there were red flags and there were signs that were maybe not ignored, not even seen. And that's the sad part. And I think we addressed that with her mother, who feels regret. She feels shame. So this was a big moment for her to come out and talk about this.
And I mean, look, it's tough when when the killer is someone that you brought into your home, right? And no one could have predicted this was going to happen. I know that there was some talk during the trial, at least from Alex's defense, that the warning signs were there. But, we've covered a number of these and followed a number of these cases. I don't care what red flags or warning signs you think are there. No one expects a human being to do this to another human being, especially a little girl, a teenage girl like Claudia. So, that is something I think that no parent wants to experience. But imagine having to go back and go, what did I miss? I think it's safe to say, though, that no one could have predicted this was going to happen. And, hopefully she doesn't carry that, Joanne doesn't carry that with her for very long. I hope that this is part of the healing process. But very emotional. This documentary, you're going to hear from everybody who knew Claudia, and you're leading up to the sentence and the sound and the words that were expressed during sentencing from the family.
It's very powerful. And someone, Victoria Guerrero, asked how long it took us to make this. It's hard to explain how long it took, but we've been working on it since January of 2025. I can't believe that. There were lulls. There were times where we were waiting on doing the next interview. There were times where it was, put aside for that moment. But it's been almost a year, right? Would you say? How was that for you, trying to compartmentalize and organize and, emotionally too?
We just didn't want to lose anything, try to keep it organized. So, where all this stuff is 10, 11 months later is a challenge.
And you want to finish it. It's just, you have to have that patience. And
sure.
That's important in this realm that we work in. So we have a little bit of time. I hope you guys ask more questions for our special guests. We are about to show you this documentary in just a little bit, but we appreciate nearly 100 of you watching right now on your 3 o'clock in the afternoon here for the live streaming premiere of No Way to Die, the murder of Claudia Lucero. I really hope you guys stay tuned and watch this through with us, and you'll get to hear from Farrell Swope, the retired death investigator for the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office. His insight is so compelling and fascinating, and this case has stuck with him for such a long time as well. So And without further ado, No Way to Die, the murder of Claudia Lucero. You just walked through the shop, but it's okay.
don't talk to no one. Not my best friend at the time, or right now. I don't talk to her about it fully. I don't talk to my mom about it. I just keep it to myself because there's too many things in my head going on. And my name is Pamela. I was one of Claudia's best friends. I met her when we were in 4th grade.
One thing remained the same during Claudia Lucero's short life. From birth to childhood to her early teen years, her warmth was felt by everyone she loved. At 14, she had become a vibrant personality who enjoyed dancing, fashion, and makeup.
She just made everyone feel comfortable. She was the life of the party, always making people laugh. Her laugh was super infectious. She was such a kind soul. To this day, I haven't met someone who's so unique how she was, and so kind and vibrant, full of life and family-oriented.
A popular freshman at Westwood High School in Mesa, but family was everything. Joanne Lucero was a single mom of 4, raising Rick, Mark, Claudia, and Jacob.
She was very caring, thoughtful, always had a smile on her face.
Claudia was last seen by her family around 6:30 on the morning of December 5th, 2013, getting ready for school. But Claudia never showed up to school that day.
She was supposed to meet up with a friend after school. The friend had called me after I got off of work and went to the office and stuff. The friend had called me and told me that she never showed up.
Claudia was a student at Westwood High School in Mesa. Her fellow students very upset.
I knew people who had classes with her, and they were just shocked.
The front door to the Lucero apartment was locked. There was no sign of a break-in, and Claudia's belongings were still there.
I drove around looking for her, calling friends, family. So I decided to wait a little while to see, maybe she'll pop up at home. She didn't, so I called the cops, waited for them to come, and they had called, and I had reported her as a runaway because I thought, a couple of things were missing. I thought she had ran away.
When she called me and she told me that, I thought it was weird because whenever something would happen and Claudia didn't, she would come to me and she would be like, can I stay with you at your house?
And that morning, I had told her, I love you, I'll see you later, because I always tell my kids, before bed or before I would go to work, I would always say, I love you. And that's what I told her.
Police say Claudia Lucero had last been seen by her family at 6:30 a.m. Thursday.
911 emergency.
Hi, we have an emergency. I think we found a dead body in the dumpster.
Okay, what's the address?
860 East Brown Road.
There was something on the news about finding a body. And then when I got to the apartment with the boys, the detective had told the boys that they had found her deceased.
When her mom told me that she was no longer with us, and I just started just wailing at the top of my lungs, and I fell to the floor. And her brother tried to console me, but it was very, very hard. And the pain doesn't go away, and it never will, but she just didn't deserve that.
Mesa police say 2 women discovered the body while dumpster diving for cans. We spoke to one of the women who declined to be interviewed on camera, but she says she was standing inside the dumpster when she felt something strange beneath her feet.
I heard the noise, and I get up to look, and I see the lights, and then I see the police, and I see them taking out this big square thing, and I thought it was a bomb.
My name's Farrell Swope. I'm a retired death investigator for the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office, where I served for nearly 18 years. There's very few people in the world that did what I did for my career. But like I say, I feel like it was the most important thing I ever did in my life. Yeah, so we pulled up in here, me and my partner, and then while this was going on, there was one detective inside the dumpster, and there was a couple of crime scene specialists. They had all the stuff they were pulling out. It was all laid out right here. There was a large Tupperware container. There was a bunch of personal belongings that they believed had been taken from the scene. So they had that stuff out there. And then there was a detective inside the dumpster processing stuff when I got there.
We're looking at the spot where Claudia Lucero was found.
This is definitely the spot. I won't forget it.
It's just like hard to believe that someone would actually get her body and just throw her in the trash.
Claudia's body was located 2 miles away from where she lived. The community would be shaken as classmates thought about how that could be them.
It hurts, you know, because it's my sister and everyone's here to support him, which makes me happy.
The suspect, when he dumped the body in the dumpster, he pulled the trunk liner out of his car and threw that in there with the body. Well, the liner had a tag on it which identified what kind of car it came out of. So they wanted to get to that car.
Police arrested Alex Madrid on an unrelated case, a probation violation. At the time, he was 31 and was a person of interest in Claudia's murder before leading officers on a short car chase. Through a search warrant, police learned that his trunk was missing the gray liner that had been discovered in the dumpster.
Madrid is behind bars on suspicion of sexually assaulting and strangling 14-year-old Claudia Lucero, disposing of her body in a dumpster.
I cannot possibly imagine or conceive the feelings of the Lucero family today.
Madrid was the ex-boyfriend of Joanne Lucero. He was around the family a lot, and there were red flags.
He had told me that he had feelings for an ex of his still, so that's why he couldn't be there or be with me. He came and got his things and he left.
Madrid's criminal history was lengthy, in and out of prison since the year 2000. Convictions ranged from burglary to theft to aggravated harassment. He had just been released from prison in the summer of 2013 before getting into a relationship with Joanne.
I have a great job. I work my butt off. I have children to take care of. All my ties are here in Arizona. You know, there's no reason to believe that I would, you know, not show up for court. I have no failure to appears. You know, I've always shown up to court despite how much time I was facing. You know, despite any of the things that were going on in my past, I've always stood up and took responsibility for whatever was going on.
Looking back at Claudia's case, so many questions linger. In journalism, we don't always get the answers, but we never stop searching. Beyond the headlines and the arrest, why Claudia? What signs were missed? So much so that her life was discarded in the trash. This was no way to die. At Mesa PD, I get the chance to review the police report on her murder. Doctors said that Claudia had been strangled to death, probably by means of ligature.
They found her school ID in the dumpster, and they showed me some pictures of her Facebook page. The issue was, at the time, she was wrapped in a quilt which was over her head, or like a comforter style blanket, which was over her head, and her face, you couldn't see it. It was secured with, I believe it was a leather belt that was secured around her neck, so you couldn't actually see her face.
Inside the gray container, there was a brown purse, school ID, pink pair of sweats, purple underwear, socks, and t-shirts. Evidence showed that Claudia was sexually assaulted, but there were no signs of defense wounds. She was listed as a first-time runaway, despite never running away.
These are difficult cases for all of us. It brings a community out in support of a family. It makes us all think and worry about our own. And it is difficult for a police department to release all information as it may compromise the case.
The dumpster was crucial, a day away from being emptied.
If that dumpster would have got picked up, then Claudia could have been a missing person forever. Once the exam was complete and they submitted the DNA samples that they collected from her body, within a matter of days, it was the results came back, and it was game over for Alex Madrid.
Madrid's phone signal registered to a cell tower in the vicinity of where Claudia was found in that dumpster. Before his arrest, Madrid texted with Joanne. The suspect texting the victim's mother in a reassuring tone. But Madrid was a predator with a dark past, and Claudia confided in friends that she was afraid of him.
I didn't see anything, you know. And I was always working, I was tired, I didn't pay attention, you know, to what was going on. And, you know, that's in part why I feel the way I do, you know.
I remember telling her vividly, like, I don't care, I have to tell my mom. And she would just beg and plead me not to. At the time as well, I was also being molested. So when she told me, please don't tell anyone, I fell for her because I also didn't want to tell anyone. Even though I knew it was wrong, I listened to her. But that's one of my biggest regrets to this day.
Court records in 2008 reveal a case of aggravated harassment by Madrid. He kidnapped an ex-girlfriend and kept her with him for 7 days, threatening to kill her family if she left. When she did get out, she had bruises on her arms and legs.
I'm Rachel Mitchell, Maricopa County Attorney.
How difficult is it when a case takes as long as it does to get to trial? And you've got victims' families who are growing frustrated and impatient.
When we sit down with the family and say we're considering seeking the death penalty, to me that's a contract with the family. You're saying to them, this is going to be a long time process, and please, you know, hang in there with us. And it's so emotional for them.
It's been horrible, you know, because I never got the chance to really grieve the loss of my daughter. Every year there was something new that would pop up, and you know, we thought, okay, this year's gonna be the year it's gonna happen, and then you get that phone call like, no, it's not gonna happen, it's pushed out. And that would happen every year. It was heartbreaking because that's a long 11 years that it took to finally get the justice, you know. I feel like in my heart it should have been done a lot sooner, but having to relive it every year, it's painful, you know. It's painful.
I just felt like with the kind of case it was so concrete, so solid, so everything was in place that it should have been pretty simple.
In Arizona, death penalty cases require aggravating circumstances to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. What are common examples of aggravating circumstances?
Aggravating circumstance, an example would be somebody's criminal history or whether they committed other serious offenses at the same time. So, for example, if 2 people are killed versus 1 person. Another example would be if the victim was made to suffer. They suffered, they knew that they were going to die.
The medical examiner says she'd been strangled and sexually assaulted, and prosecutors say Madrid was linked to the crime through DNA.
And you will find that there is no other appropriate verdict in this case but guilty.
It was on my mind heavily, like, am I gonna bawl my eyes out? Like, I was scared, I was nervous to see him. But the moment I saw him, I was just full of rage again. And I fought every cell in my body not to attack him, not to scream at him. Just full of rage.
Trial lasted 27 days. For Claudia's loved ones, it was traumatic and mentally exhausting to be reminded of horrific details. Prosecutors presented the case, arguing that the evidence of semen found on Claudia matched to the DNA sample from Madrid. When you look back on this, I mean, how tragic is the evidence in her story?
It's heartbreaking. All of it is tragic, but you know, I guess maybe because of my background as a sex crimes prosecutor and a child crimes prosecutor, obviously when it's a child or young person who is, their life is cut so short and in such a horrific way, obviously that resonates.
The sentencing phase begins next Wednesday. The jury will decide whether Madrid will be put to death or get life.
After being found guilty, the penalty phase followed to decide if Madrid would be sentenced to death.
You know, it's not a situation where it's a joyous event or anything like that. It's a somber event. It feels right. It feels like justice has been achieved, but I mean, what we wouldn't give, what the family wouldn't give for this never to have gotten to this point. It feels like the right resolution, but it's not anything to celebrate.
I want you to look at that picture of a sweet, adorable little boy and consider how that child ended up being the killer and, quite frankly, asshole who you've been dealing with throughout this trial. Because killers and assholes aren't born that way. They're the product of their environment. They're the product of their life experiences.
The defense broke down Madrid's trauma, brain damage, and rough childhood. At 8 years old, he witnessed his uncle shot and killed in front of him. His lawyer said he had been abused and neglected in the foster care system and suffered from mental illness and PTSD. The purpose was to provide mitigating reasons for the jury to choose a life sentence rather than death. But prosecutors countered, and victims gave impact statements.
No matter how old I am, no matter where I'm at, I will always grieve Claudia. She holds a very special place in my heart.
It destroys me to know that I will never get another letter or hear her say, "I love you, Mom," or "Mommy." If I could go back in time, I would have made better choices, but I can't. And now I have to live with that pain and guilt for the rest of my life.
There's people waiting, family waiting for some kind of justice here, and this has taken a really long time. You were hoping, you know, for their sake, that this would be over someday, you know, and now it finally is.
Verdict. We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled action, upon our oaths, unanimously find that the defendant should be sentenced to death. Signed by the foreperson, juror number 8. Is this your true verdict? So say you one and all.
Yes. Yes.
Madrid sentenced to death, but was given the chance to speak to the court and Claudia's family.
I just want to thank you guys. I know I thought you were going to go back there, take 10 minutes, come to your decision, and It shows me that at least you guys thought about what this was. You know, I know it probably wasn't easy on any of you guys. Joanne, I'm sorry. Mark, Ricky, Jacob, sorry. I hope you find it in your heart to forgive me one day.
I really want him to suffer. I don't know. It's hard for me to say. I'm happy he got the death penalty. I'm happy he's gonna suffer. I hope he doesn't get put down for many, many, many years, so he's just waiting till the day he dies and he'll suffer till then.
What does justice truly look like? How does it feel? It's never black or white when family and friends are still broken after a death sentence.
I'll never forgive him. I'll never forgive myself because I'll always live with that regret of I could have done something. I could have tried harder. I could have used my voice. I could have fought for her harder. So no, the pain will never go away and I don't think I'll ever feel better about it.
This was also, in this situation, a 14-year-old girl whose life was cut short, who will never know graduating from high school, who will never know the decision to go to college or what profession or being walked down the aisle.
I just wanted it to be known how my daughter was and who she was, and she didn't deserve what she got, what he did.
At the time, my daughter was about the same age as Claudia, so it definitely hit home for me, and it just to see somebody's child thrown away like a piece of garbage.
She loved makeup, and at that time, you know, YouTube had just started. Now, as an adult looking back, I would know for a fact that she would have been a YouTuber or an influencer.
And all I have left of her is memories and photos, you know, and I have to move on with myself and live without her now, and that breaks my heart.
The long wait for justice comes with pain. The saying, time heals all wounds, is not always true for everyone. But the quote on Claudia's headstone makes this point. Maybe it's not about the happy ending. Maybe it's about the story. And I want to thank the family of Claudia Lucero, her best friend, everyone who contributed to this. Thank you all for watching here right now on our YouTube stream. Fox 10 investigator Justin Lum here with Special Projects EP George Obi. We also have a special guest, Farrell Swope, death investigator, retired death investigator, who you saw there in that documentary. Thank you for being here with us and watching this for the first time.
I appreciate it. Very, very nicely done. I do want to say, though, I am not here representing the medical examiner's office. I'm representing myself, and I'm here for Claudia.
Yeah, it feels like this has followed you for a long time, this case. It's stuck with you, and you have been on the scene of countless deaths. I mean, what is it about this case?
Well, you know, it just, the way, I think what stood out for me the most was, like, all the agencies involved just seemed to come together. And it was like the mood was, let's get this guy. So, you know, and that, fortunately, he made that really easy. All the stuff he left behind and with the evidence and all, it was matter of fact, I remember one detective saying that, you know, he couldn't ever remember a time where things were going so well as far as putting the case together.
All right. Well, for all of you still watching, please leave your questions in the chat box, specifically for Mr. Swope here. We want to open up the discussion, and we're going to take a quick break. We'll see you in a little bit. Fox and Investigator Justin Lum here. You guys are watching the live stream premiere event here on our Fox and Phoenix YouTube channel. You just saw No Way to Die, the murder of Claudia Lucero. And right now we're going to open up the floor. I mean, you could feel a lot of emotion come out of that from family members, and even just, you know, how we were just talking to Farrell Swope here, just how it followed him through the years. This is definitely a heavy case.
A heavy case. Anytime you're dealing with, I think, a child who's been murdered, let alone murdered in this way, is, you know, real tough pill to swallow. We are coming up now, you know, not surprising for those following the timeline, 12 years. Right, December 5th, 2013. So we're coming up on 12 years for this crime, and we're only less than a year removed from the family getting justice, which I think is, it's obviously, as we mentioned in the documentary, frustrating for the family, but they finally got it earlier this year. And so you mentioned, obviously, retired death investigator Farrell Swope, who was in the documentary, who we spoke with at the crime scene. And Mr. Swope, I'll ask you, if you can take us back to the day that you and Justin walked through the complex all those years later. I was surprised just how kind of nothing really had changed, right? There was no new development. Everything was almost like it had stood still in time. Can you go back and describe to me some of what you were feeling walking through the parking lot towards the dumpster that day?
Well, you know, I was surprised, too, when I got there. Like, there was absolutely no change in the apartment complex. Everything looked the very same way it did the day I pulled up in the van. And all this chaos was going on. You know, the command vehicle was there. They had quite a team of detectives out there and crime scene specialists. There was prosecutors there. Everybody was in high gear on this.
How often do you think about this? You know, it could be driving through Mesa. It could be just random moments. But how has that crept up in your mind these years?
Well, you know, I did almost 7,000 cases, and everywhere I go, there's somewhere I've been. So, you know, but this one, for sure, it stuck with me hard. You know, I mean, I thought about it all the time. I was always wondering. I was in touch with her cousin. We became really good friends when this all happened, and we kind of went through it together. We were waiting patiently, and I would always contact him and say, you know, have you heard anything new? You know, and he's like, no, we're just still waiting. We don't know what's going to happen here. So, but I felt really confident that. You know, there was no way he was going to get out of it. I mean, there was just a mountain of evidence, everything. He actually expedited the case by concealing her identity. At the time, we were like 5 to 7 days out on autopsies, but because he concealed her identity, they moved the case up to the next day. Well, you know, when I got back to the office, Dr. Ferentz, who did her exam, he was standing downstairs waiting for me. And that was definitely one of the most memorable moments of it for me. You know, when I saw him, I knew he was in a heap of trouble.
We've heard over the years, detectives, you know, they look to get leads within that first 48-hour time period. You mentioned in the documentary how close this crime scene came to being kind of washed away or removed had the trash been picked up. I hope people caught on to that.
That's just crazy to say, right?
Yeah, that this could have changed the entire investigation had whoever discovered the body not done so at that time, because it was your understanding that the next day trash pickup was happening.
Right. You know, in all the years I was with the office, I can't recall one time they ever went to the landfill looking for a body and they ever found it. It just, once it gets to that point, you're looking for a needle in a haystack. I mean, they may have been able to still arrest him and convict him, but boy, it would have been a lot harder, you know, without her body. So thank God, you know, that didn't happen. She was found, and, you know, everything came together very, very tight. You know, as far as the case, I knew they had a heck of a case against him.
And from time to time, you've also asked about Claudia's mother, Joanne. You've wondered about how she's doing, and I know you were hoping to see her today. I've been in contact with her throughout the week, but I mean, what would you like to say to the Lucero family, specifically Joanne?
Well, most important, I'd like to say, you didn't do anything wrong. It's not your fault what happened. So, and I hope, you can find peace. I know it would really, really be hard for me, to overcome something like that. I used to call it, and I dealt with, a lot of cases involving children. And I dealt with people, that were in pain all the time, the worst moment of their lives, But when I was a kid, I always referred to it as the unconceivable pain. You can't compare it to nothing else.
Well, and you mentioned too that you, at the time of this, had a daughter around the same age. Take us into the mind of someone who does what you do, but you're also like the rest of us. You're a father. How are you able to draw that line, put up that wall, and focus really on the task at hand, and that is trying to identify and catch the person who did this?
Well, we don't. My part of it is really from a medical standpoint. The police, they do that part of it. I just try to put the case together for the doctor who's going to do the autopsy, so he knows what kind of case it is, what kind of exam he needs to go to do, what direction he needs to head. So basically what I would do is what's called the preliminary report of death. So, and as far as that, you have to, and I was telling you earlier, in all the calls I ever went to, I never lost control of my emotions at a scene because, you're so focused on what you're doing, you have to turn that switch off. I kind of call it going into beast mode. You gotta be there. And I always describe this job as, with new people would come in, I would tell them, well, it's like running through a minefield, but it's what you miss that blows you up, not what you land on. You have to really stay focused on. It's not so much knowing the answers. You have to know the questions, though. And so that's what the doctors want you to do, is know what the questions are and put as much as you can into your report.
Yeah, I think when you're walking in that scene, you sort of look like a detective, a homicide detective to some, but like you said, you're focused on the medical aspect, and there was so much here. The forensic evidence was all over the place. The bin, the trunk liner, which I think was very key. And Mesa police knew they had a person of interest right away in Madrid. And you said it, once everything came back, I like how you put it was game over.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, Ed, I can't think of another case that I was ever on where, he might as well left a note there that said he did it, because everything was there pointing to him. They had his, his cell phone, they had the trunk liner, they had his DNA. He knew her routine. He knew the situation was going to be. He knew when to attack. All these things. He had it. All in place. So it was definitely premeditated, all the way.
Were you surprised at any point knowing how quickly they made an arrest? I mean, look, we know now the digital evidence, the forensic evidence was there. Obviously, it can complicate things when you're in a dumpster environment with all this other material. But I mentioned earlier, it's not often, I feel like, that when we hear about a heinous murder like this, that within less than 24 hours, they've identified the person of interest, and then within a day or two, they make an arrest. Unless the suspect is still there or admits to it. And clearly, as we learned, he didn't say much after he was brought in. Do you get a false, is there something inside you that's a false sense of hope going, this is too easy? Like this was, somebody to go to this length to murder a young girl and then just to be sloppy in that regard. Do you second guess and go, wait a minute, I need to make sure, because this feels like it happened too quickly?
Well, you know, I mean, they knew when I went into the command vehicle, they already had his picture up on the screen. You know, that was the first time I saw his face. You know, so I knew they were on it. They had prosecutors there, in the command vehicle, and they were going over everything. And I felt like, yeah, this is going really good. And they said the same thing. We've got him. You know, we know we got him. So, and he, like I say, he expedited the case by concealing her identity. He moved everything forward, and that's what they needed. Really, was to confirm that identity, was to get the search warrant for his car, because they couldn't do that without confirming that it was her. Now, you know, one of the things about her that was very unique was she had these really small hands, and they showed me a picture of her Facebook page, and you could see that in the picture, and I could see that at the scene, and I knew it was her, but they needed to be concrete to get those warrants.
Well, Farrell, I just want to say thank you for being a part of this. You know, we have a couple minutes left, and I know we could talk for hours about this, and we went so in depth, you know, as we started this project. But thank you so much for joining in this and helping remember Claudia's story.
Well, I really appreciate you having me. I'm glad you wanted me to be involved in it. You did an excellent job. I was wondering what was taking so long, but now I see, you know, you did a great job.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I know the family appreciates you as well, your insight, and someone else that felt close in a way to Claudia after that happened. And
Definitely.
So that's really important, and that's what this documentary was about. Obviously, you can't ignore the heinous crimes here, but you know, you have to discuss that, what Madrid did, the evidence he left behind, what he said. I think it was hard to read those messages, you know, for all of us, say, wow, this was happening in the midst of all this. At the end of the day, the focus, as you saw on Claudia's headstone, you know, it's not always about the happy ending. Not everyone gets happy ending, but it's about the story. And as we wrap this up, I hope you guys enjoyed at least taking part in this experience with us. And if you support local journalism, long-form documentaries, investigative work, I mean, we just ask that you like, subscribe, and hit the bell on our channel for notifications. Send us your tips. Stay tuned with us because these stories matter. So we appreciate y'all for being here. For the rest of the Fox 10 Investigates team, I'm Justin Lum. We'll see you soon.